Blue, the female adult velociraptor from Jurassic World, was undergoing an iron infusion treatment that would take the entire day to finish. The scenario unfolded inside a dimly lit hangar, with the sounds of machines humming in the background. Owen Grady, Blue's loyal trainer and protector, sat on a chair nearby, watching over her silently. His gaze never left Blue as he sat idle, lost in his thoughts. The day slowly turned into night, with darkness creeping in from outside the hangar. The iron infusion process continued on, the steady drip of the liquid filling the room with a monotonous rhythm. Owen remained by Blue's side, his presence a comfort to her as she endured the treatment. As the infusion neared its completion, Owen gently removed the pins from Blue's body. She slowly got up, using her clawed hands to grab Owen's hand. He helped her stand on her hind limbs, her towering figure a testament to her strength and resilience. Owen led Blue to a separate sleeping room, where she lay down on the floor. He settled on the bed, watching over her protectively as she drifted off to sleep. In the darkness of the room, Blue pulled out a phone from somewhere and stared at a picture of herself with her velociraptor teammates, Charlie, Echo, and Delta. Her gaze lingered on each of them, a mix of memories flooding her mind. As she looked at the picture, Blue saw the faces of her late mother and daughter among her teammates. The loss of her loved ones hit her like a wave, and she closed her eyes, tears welling up in her reptilian eyes. Silent sobs racked her body as she curled up on the floor, the weight of her grief heavy on her chest. The sound of her sorrow echoed in the empty room, a mournful melody that only she could hear. Owen watched helplessly as Blue relived the pain of her past, the weight of her losses bearing down on her fragile heart. He wanted to reach out, to offer comfort, but he knew that some wounds ran too deep for words to heal. As Blue finally succumbed to sleep, her body trembling with suppressed emotion, Owen felt a surge of protectiveness wash over him. He vowed to stand by her side, to be her rock in the storm of her emotions. The night stretched on, the hangar filled with the quiet hum of machines and the sound of Blue's restless sleep. In the darkness, two souls, one human, one dinosaur, found solace in each other's silent presence. And as the first light of dawn broke through the windows, Owen knew that no matter what the future held, he would always be there for Blue. A bond forged in darkness, strengthened by loss, and destined to endure. Words. 473. As Owen Grady woke up the next morning, he found Blue still curled up on the floor, tears staining her scales. He immediately felt a pang of guilt for not being there to comfort her during her moment of grief. He gently knelt down beside her and placed a reassuring hand on her back. "Blue, it's okay. I'm here for you," he whispered softly. Blue looked up at him with her big, sorrowful eyes, still holding back tears. Owen could see the pain and heartache in her gaze, and he wished he could take it all away. He slowly helped her to her feet and led her outside to the open field surrounding the hangar. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a warm glow over the landscape. Owen knew that Blue loved these early morning moments, where she could feel free and at peace. As they walked together, Owen thought about the bond he shared with Blue. She was more than just a velociraptor to him, she was family. He remembered the day they first met, when he looked into her eyes and saw intelligence and curiosity staring back at him. He knew that Blue had been through a lot in her life, from being created in a lab to losing her beloved pack members. But through it all, she had remained strong and resilient. Owen admired her bravery and loyalty, and he was grateful to have her by his side. As they reached a clearing, Owen stopped and turned to face Blue. He could see a glimmer of hope in her eyes, a flicker of resilience that he knew would never fade. "Blue, I may not be able to understand everything you've been through, but I want you to know that I will always be here for you. You're not alone. We're in this together," Owen said, his words filled with sincerity and warmth. Blue looked at him, a sense of gratitude and trust shining in her eyes. She knew that Owen was a true friend, someone who would always have her back no matter what. In that moment, as the sun rose higher in the sky and a gentle breeze rustled through the trees, Owen and Blue stood side by side, united in their bond and their shared journey ahead. From that day on, Owen made a promise to always be there for Blue, to support her through the highs and lows, and to cherish the moments they shared together. And Blue, in turn, vowed to never give up, to keep fighting for a better future, and to always remember the love and kindness that Owen had shown her. As they walked back to the hangar, a sense of peace and understanding settled over them. They knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as family. And with that thought in their hearts, Owen and Blue continued on their journey, ready to face whatever the future held. Words. 496. Blue, the female adult velociraptor from Jurassic World, had always been a fierce and powerful predator. But now, as she lay hooked up to an iron infusion in a dimly lit hangar, she appeared vulnerable and fragile. The procedure was necessary to replenish her depleted blood levels, but it would take the entire day to complete. Owen Grady, her trainer and protector, sat silently beside her, watching over her with a sense of quiet vigilance. He felt a deep sense of responsibility towards Blue, knowing that she was not just a dangerous predator, but also a sentient being who had experienced loss and pain in her life. As the hours passed and the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the hangar, Owen remained by Blue's side, his gaze never leaving her. He could see the exhaustion and pain in her eyes, the weariness that came from a lifetime of battling to survive in a world that saw her kind as nothing more than monsters. Finally, as the iron infusion came to an end and the needles were removed from Blue's body, she slowly rose to her feet, her movements hesitant and weak. She reached out a clawed hand towards Owen, a silent plea for comfort and support. Owen gently took her hand and helped her to stand on her hind legs, guiding her towards a separate sleeping room where she could rest. Blue lay down on the floor, her body curled up in a small ball of vulnerability and sadness. In a rare moment of introspection, Blue pulled out a phone from her pocket and gazed at a picture of herself with her teammates Charlie, Echo, and Delta. The image brought back memories of happier times, of a time when she was surrounded by her fellow velociraptors who had been like family to her. But as her gaze lingered on the faces of her late mother and daughter in the picture, Blue's stoic facade crumbled. Silent tears began to fall from her reptilian eyes, mixing with the salty residue of her sorrow and loss. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to release the pent-up emotions that had been swirling inside her for so long. The weight of her grief and loneliness was a heavy burden to bear, and in that moment, she allowed herself to feel the full extent of her pain. Owen, unaware of Blue's silent breakdown, continued to sleep peacefully on the bed, his presence a source of comfort and reassurance for the wounded velociraptor. In her vulnerable state, Blue sought solace in his proximity, drawing strength from his unspoken support. As the night deepened and the hangar fell into a quiet stillness, Blue remained curled up on the floor, her silent sobs echoing in the darkness. She mourned the loss of her loved ones, feeling the ache of their absence like a physical weight on her chest. But even in her moment of profound sorrow, there was a flicker of hope in Blue's heart. She knew that she was not alone, that she had a loyal friend in Owen who would always be there for her, no matter what trials and tribulations they faced together. And so, as she drifted off into an uneasy slumber, Blue clung to that glimmer of hope, finding solace in the knowledge that no matter how dark the night may be, the dawn would always bring the promise of a new day. Words 572. As the night grew darker, Blue's heart felt heavier with the weight of her losses. She lay curled up on the cold floor of the sleeping room, her silent tears falling onto the concrete as she mourned the absence of her beloved teammates and family. Owen, still asleep on the bed, was unaware of the turmoil raging inside the intelligent velociraptor. Throughout the night, Blue tossed and turned, her mind filled with memories of happier times. She remembered the playful antics of Charlie, the fierce loyalty of Echo, and the gentle guidance of Delta. They were more than just teammates to her, they were her family. And now, they were gone, taken from her in the blink of an eye. As the first light of dawn filtered through the small window of the sleeping room, Blue finally stirred from her restless sleep. She wiped away her tears with a clawed hand, taking a shaky breath as she tried to compose herself. But the pain of her loss was still fresh, still raw, and it threatened to consume her. Owen, now awake and sensing Blue's distress, moved to her side. He knelt down beside her, his hand reaching out to gently touch her scaled cheek. Blue looked up at him, her eyes reflecting a deep sadness that Owen could not ignore. "I know you're hurting, Blue," Owen said softly, his voice carrying a soothing tone. "But you're not alone. I'm here for you, no matter what." Blue let out a soft chuff, a sound of acknowledgement and gratitude. She leaned into Owen's touch, seeking comfort in his presence. And although she could not speak the words, she knew that he understood her pain. Together, they stayed in the quiet room, the only sound the soft breathing of the two companions. Blue eventually drifted off to a peaceful sleep, her grief momentarily eased by Owen's presence. But as the day wore on, a new threat loomed on the horizon. A group of mercenaries, seeking to capture Blue for their own nefarious purposes, descended upon the hangar where she lay vulnerable. Owen, sensing the danger, sprang into action, his instincts as a former Navy SEAL taking over. With swift precision, Owen dispatched the mercenaries one by one, his training and skills ensuring Blue's safety. But the battle was far from over, and the odds were stacked against them. As the last of the mercenaries fell, defeated, Owen turned to Blue, a look of determination in his eyes. "We need to get out of here, Blue," he said, his voice urgent. "There's no telling how many more of them are out there." Blue nodded in agreement, her eyes flashing with intelligence and resolve. Together, they made their escape, slipping out of the hangar and into the dense jungle beyond. For days, they evaded their pursuers, using their wits and instincts to stay one step ahead. And through it all, Owen and Blue forged a bond that transcended words, a bond born of trust and loyalty. In the end, they emerged victorious, the threat vanquished and their bond stronger than ever. As they stood side by side, gazing out at the fading light of the setting sun, Blue let out a contented chuff, a sound of gratitude and affection. And in that moment, as the world around them fell into a peaceful silence, Owen knew that he had found a true friend in the fierce and loyal velociraptor known as Blue. And Blue, in turn, knew that she had found a kindred spirit in the courageous and compassionate human named Owen Grady. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, united in their common bond and unwavering friendship. Words. 613. Blue, the female adult velociraptor from Jurassic World, lay still on the medical bed, undergoing the iron infusion that would take the entire day to finish. Owen Grady, the trainer who had formed a special bond with Blue, sat on a chair beside her, watching over her without saying a word. The hangar was quiet, the only sound being the soft whirring of the infusion machine. As the hours passed, the sky outside slowly turned dark, signaling the arrival of night. Owen remained silent, his gaze never leaving Blue as the iron infusion slowly came to an end. Carefully, he removed the pins from her body, and Blue, feeling weak from the procedure, used her clawed hands to grab Owen's hand for support. Owen helped her up, guiding her to a separate sleeping room where she could rest. Blue lay down on the floor, curling up in a corner, while Owen settled down on the bed, ready to keep watch over her through the night. In the quiet of the room, Blue pulled out a phone from somewhere hidden on her person. She scrolled through the pictures, stopping at one that showed her with her velociraptor teammates Charlie, Echo, and Delta. In the photo, she also saw her late mother and daughter, bringing a wave of sadness and longing over her. Tears welled up in her reptilian eyes as she silently mourned the loss of her loved ones, her silent sobs filling the room. She curled up on the floor, holding onto her tail for comfort, feeling the weight of the grief that she carried within her. Owen, unaware of Blue's emotional turmoil, slept soundly on the bed, his presence offering some solace to the grieving velociraptor. In her sleep, Blue felt like a vulnerable hatchling once more, the pain of loss weighing heavily on her heart. As the night wore on, a sense of unease crept into the hangar. A low growl echoed through the room, causing Blue to stir from her troubled slumber. Her instincts sharpened, alerting her to a presence that shouldn't be there. Without waking Owen, Blue rose to her feet, her senses on high alert. The darkness seemed to hide a lurking danger, and Blue knew that she had to protect both herself and the man who had shown her kindness. Stealthily, she crept towards the source of the growling, her claws at the ready. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, its eyes gleaming with malice. It was a rogue dinosaur, a threat to both Blue and Owen. With a primal roar, Blue launched herself at the intruder, engaging it in a fierce battle that shook the hangar. The sound of snarls and claws clashing filled the air, the fight escalating into a deadly struggle for survival. Owen woke up to the commotion, catching a glimpse of Blue locked in combat with the rogue dinosaur. With quick thinking, he grabbed a nearby weapon, rushing to aid his friend in the fight. Together, Blue and Owen fought as a team, their bond stronger than ever in the face of danger. The rogue dinosaur was no match for their combined strength and skills, eventually retreating into the night, defeated. As the hangar fell silent once more, Blue and Owen stood side by side, breathing heavily from the adrenaline of battle. Their unspoken connection spoke volumes, a testament to the trust and loyalty that had formed between them. In the quiet aftermath of the fight, Blue turned to Owen, her eyes speaking of gratitude and respect. He smiled back, a silent understanding passing between them. And as the first light of dawn crept into the hangar, illuminating the scene of a victorious duo, Blue knew that no matter the challenges they faced, she had found a true companion in Owen Grady. Together, they would continue to navigate the dangerous world they inhabited, a bond forged in battle and strengthened by the unbreakable ties of friendship. Words. 658. The sound of the iron infusion machine hummed softly in the hangar where Blue, the female adult velociraptor from Jurassic World, was undergoing treatment. The room was dimly lit, with only a few flickering lights casting shadows across the walls. Owen Grady sat silently in a chair, watching over Blue as she lay still on the table, her eyes closed in concentration. As the day slowly turned into night, the iron infusion finally came to an end. Owen carefully removed the pins from Blue's body, and she slowly got up, using her clawed hands to grab onto his hand for support. With a gentle touch, he helped her to stand on her hind legs, and together they made their way to a separate sleeping room. Blue settled down on the floor, curling up in a corner while Owen took the bed. As he drifted off to sleep, Blue pulled out a phone from seemingly nowhere and started to flip through the pictures on it. She paused as she came across a photo of her and her velociraptor teammates, Charlie, Echo, and Delta. In the image, Blue saw not only her beloved friends but also her late mother and daughter. The memories of their loss hit her like a tidal wave, and she collapsed to the ground, silent tears streaming down her reptilian face. She clutched her tail in a tight grip, trying to find comfort in the familiar sensation. Owen remained oblivious to Blue's emotional turmoil as she lay there sobbing softly, mourning the ones she had lost. The weight of her grief seemed almost palpable in the air as she curled up on the floor, feeling like a vulnerable hatchling once again. The room was filled with a sense of heaviness as Blue's cries echoed through the empty space. The flickering lights cast eerie shadows on the walls, creating a haunting atmosphere in the hangar. The night seemed to stretch on forever as Blue wept, lost in her own world of pain and sorrow. As the hours passed, the darkness outside deepened, and the hangar fell into complete silence. The only sound was Blue's soft sobs, a heartbreaking melody that pierced through the stillness of the night. Owen shifted restlessly in his sleep, sensing something amiss but unable to grasp the depth of Blue's anguish. Eventually, exhaustion overtook Blue, and she drifted off into a fitful slumber, her tears drying on her scaly cheeks. The room fell into a hushed tranquility, the tension of the night slowly dissipating as both Blue and Owen slept, unaware of the emotional turmoil that had gripped them. In the quiet of the hangar, a sense of peace settled over Blue as she finally found some solace in sleep. The weight of her grief lifted slightly, allowing her to rest and find respite from the pain that had haunted her for so long. And as the night faded into dawn, a new day brought with it a glimmer of hope for healing and closure for Blue and Owen, as they faced the challenges of a new day together. Words. 515. As Owen Grady woke up the next morning, he noticed that Blue was still curled up on the floor, her tail tightly grasped in her claws as tears stained her scales. Concerned, Owen knelt down beside her and gently stroked her back, trying to comfort her in her time of grief. "Blue, it's okay. I'm here for you," Owen whispered softly, hoping to soothe her turmoil. Blue slowly opened her eyes, still glossy with unshed tears, and looked at Owen with a mixture of pain and gratitude. "Owen. I miss them," Blue said, her voice raw with emotion. "I miss Charlie, Echo, Delta. I miss my mother and my daughter. Why did they have to leave me?" Owen felt his heart break for Blue as he listened to her mournful words. He knew that she had been through so much, losing her pack members and her family. It was a pain that he couldn't even begin to understand. But he was determined to be there for her, to help her heal and overcome the grief that weighed her down. "Blue, I know it hurts. But you're not alone. I'm here for you, and we'll get through this together," Owen said, his voice filled with compassion. Blue looked at him, her eyes searching for solace and finding it in Owen's unwavering support. "Thank you, Owen," Blue said, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "I don't know what I would do without you." Owen helped Blue to her feet, his touch gentle and reassuring. As they walked out of the sleeping room and into the hangar, the morning sun casting a warm glow over their surroundings, Owen knew that they had a long journey ahead of them. But he was determined to guide Blue through it, to help her find peace and acceptance in the face of loss. Together, they faced the day ahead, knowing that they had each other to lean on in times of darkness. And as they watched the sun rise higher in the sky, casting its golden light over the world around them, Owen knew that they would find a way to move forward, to heal the wounds that still lingered in Blue's heart. As they stood side by side, their bond stronger than ever, Owen and Blue knew that the future held promise and hope, a new beginning born from the ashes of their past. And with each step they took forward, Blue's spirit lifted, her heart lighter as she embraced the journey ahead with newfound strength and determination. And as they walked into the unknown, uncertainty giving way to possibility, Owen and Blue knew that together, they could conquer anything that came their way. For in each other, they found the courage to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that their bond would always be their greatest strength. Words. 476. The hangar was quiet, the only sound being the gentle hum of the machines as Blue, the female adult velociraptor from Jurassic World, underwent her iron infusion. Owen Grady sat beside her, his expression pensive as he watched over her. The process was slow, taking the entire day to complete, and as the sun began to set outside, casting a dim light into the hangar, Owen remained vigilant. As the iron infusion neared its end, Owen carefully removed the pins from Blue's body. She stirred, her reptilian eyes meeting his, and she reached out with her clawed hand, gripping his own. Slowly, Owen helped her to stand on her hind legs, guiding her to a separate sleeping room. Blue lay down on the floor, curling up in a corner, while Owen settled onto the bed. As the room grew quiet, Blue suddenly pulled out a phone from somewhere hidden on her body. Owen watched as she stared at a picture of herself with her velociraptor teammates, Charlie, Echo, and Delta. But it wasn't just her teammates Blue saw in the picture. In the background, she saw her late mother and daughter, both gone now. A wave of grief washed over her, and she closed her eyes, tears streaming silently down her reptilian face. She clutched the phone to her chest, the weight of loss heavy on her heart. Owen, still unaware of Blue's silent sorrow, drifted off to sleep. But Blue remained awake, her sobs quiet but wrenching. She curled up on the floor, her body shuddering with each tear that fell. The pain of losing her loved ones, her family, was a heavy burden to bear. In her grief, Blue felt a longing for the days when she was just a hatchling, safe and warm in her mother's care. She reached out with her clawed hand, grasping her own tail, seeking comfort in the familiar touch. As the night wore on, Blue's sobs eventually subsided, and she fell into a fitful sleep. Owen stirred, sensing something amiss, but he couldn't quite place it. He watched over Blue, his brow furrowed with concern, but he couldn't reach her in her dreams. In the darkness of the hangar, a sense of unease lingered. The quiet was suffocating, broken only by the faint sound of Blue's breathing. Owen sat by her side, a silent guardian in the night, watching over her as she navigated the depths of her grief. As dawn approached, the first light of morning filtering into the hangar, Blue stirred. She opened her eyes, the weight of her sorrow still heavy on her heart, but a new determination in her gaze. She rose to her feet, her movements purposeful, and Owen watched as she took a step forward, ready to face the day ahead. With a deep breath, Blue turned to Owen, gratitude shining in her eyes. Without a word spoken between them, she conveyed her thanks, her trust, her unspoken bond. And as they stood together in the hangar, facing the new day, a sense of peace settled over them. The night of mourning had passed, but the memories of loss remained. Blue and Owen stood side by side, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, their silent connection stronger than ever before. And as the sun rose on a new day, casting a warm glow in the hangar, Blue took a step forward, her spirit unbroken, her resolve unwavering. With Owen by her side, she knew she could weather any storm, no matter how dark or daunting. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with, a bond forged in the fire of sorrow and strengthened by the power of love. And so, as the hangar filled with the light of morning, Blue and Owen stood together, ready to embark on a new chapter in their journey. The night of silent mourning had passed, but the echoes of loss lingered on, a reminder of the fragility of life and the strength of the human spirit. And as they faced the day ahead, side by side, they knew that together, they could conquer anything that came their way. Words. 691. The dimly lit sleeping room was filled with a heavy silence as Owen Grady continued to sleep soundly on the bed, unaware of the emotional turmoil unraveling just a few feet away from him. Blue, the majestic female velociraptor from Jurassic World, lay curled up on the floor, her body shaking with silent sobs as tears rolled down her reptilian cheeks. The memories of her late velociraptor teammates, Charlie, Echo, and Delta, flooded her mind as she stared at the picture on her phone. The image of her mother and her daughter only added to her grief as she felt the weight of loss crushing her soul. The pain of losing the ones she cared about most was almost unbearable, and Blue found herself unable to contain the waves of sorrow crashing over her. As she clutched her tail tightly, trying to find some comfort in its familiar touch, Blue's cries grew louder, echoing in the empty room as she mourned the absence of her loved ones. The sheer loneliness of her existence without her pack weighed heavily on her heart, and she longed for the warmth of their presence once more. In the midst of her anguish, Blue's cries caught the attention of Owen, who stirred from his sleep and immediately rushed to her side. His eyes widened in surprise and concern as he knelt down beside her, gently placing a hand on her back in an attempt to soothe her. "Blue, what's wrong?" Owen whispered softly, his voice filled with compassion and empathy. Blue turned to look at him, her eyes filled with tears as she tried to convey the depth of her pain through her gaze. Without uttering a single word, Owen understood her silent plea for comfort and reassurance. He wrapped his arms around her in a protective embrace, offering her the solace she desperately needed in that moment of vulnerability. Blue buried her face in his chest, her tears staining his shirt as she clung to him, seeking the safety and security he provided. Together, they remained locked in an embrace, sharing in the sorrow and healing each other's wounds with their unspoken bond. In that quiet moment of understanding, Blue found a sense of peace and acceptance in Owen's presence, knowing that she was not alone in her grief. As the night stretched on, the sounds of their breathing mingled in the darkness, creating a melody of comfort and companionship that eased the ache in Blue's heart. With Owen by her side, she found the strength to face the pain of her past and the uncertainty of her future, knowing that she was not alone in her struggle. And as the first light of dawn crept through the window, casting a soft glow over their intertwined forms, Blue finally closed her eyes and let herself drift into a peaceful slumber, her heart lighter and her soul healed by the power of silent understanding and unwavering compassion. And Owen, watching over her with a gentle smile, knew that their bond would endure the trials of time and tribulation, forging a connection that transcended words and spoke of a love that needed no spoken language. Words. 529. The night passed by in the hangar where Blue lay on the floor, curled up in a ball, tears staining her blue scales. Her body shook with silent sobs as memories of her past flooded her mind. She remembered the days when she roamed the jungles of Isla Nublar with her velociraptor sisters, Charlie, Echo, and Delta. They were a formidable pack, united by a bond stronger than blood. But those days were long gone. Charlie had been killed during the chaos of the Jurassic World incident, and Echo and Delta had met a similar fate. Blue was the last of her kind, the only survivor of her once proud pack. And now, as she lay on the cold concrete floor of the hangar, she felt the weight of their loss crushing her spirit. Owen Grady, her human trainer and protector, had no idea of the turmoil raging within Blue. He slept soundly on the bed, oblivious to her silent mourning. As the first light of dawn crept through the windows of the hangar, Blue finally succumbed to exhaustion and drifted into a fitful sleep. In her dreams, she saw Charlie, Echo, and Delta racing through the jungle, their calls echoing through the trees. She saw her mother, a fierce and proud alpha, teaching her how to hunt and fight. And she saw her daughter, a tiny hatchling with bright eyes and a playful spirit. But as the dream faded, the reality of her loneliness hit Blue like a physical blow. She woke with a start, tears still glistening in her eyes. The weight of her grief pressed down on her, threatening to crush her spirit completely. But suddenly, a voice cut through the darkness. It was Owen, his expression concerned as he gazed down at her. Without a word, he reached out a hand and gently stroked her head, his touch a soothing balm on her wounded soul. Blue looked up at him, her eyes filled with pain and longing. In that moment, she realized that she wasn't alone. Owen was there for her, a friend and ally in a world that had shown her nothing but cruelty. And so, as the sun rose over the hangar, Blue made a solemn vow. She would honor the memory of her lost packmates by living on, by fighting to survive in a world that sought to destroy her. And with Owen by her side, she knew that she could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The hangar was bathed in a golden light as Blue and Owen stood together, their bond unbreakable. And as they walked out into the world, ready to face whatever trials awaited them, Blue felt a glimmer of hope stirring within her heart. For she knew that no matter what the future held, she would never again have to face it alone. And with Owen by her side, she knew that she was truly unstoppable. Words. 486. In the dimly lit sleeping room of the hangar, Blue, the female adult velociraptor from Jurassic World, lay curled up on the floor, her golden reptilian eyes filled with tears of grief and sorrow. The iron infusion she had undergone earlier had left her feeling drained and vulnerable, her emotions raw and unguarded. As Owen Grady, her human caretaker and trainer, slept soundly on the bed, unaware of Blue's emotional turmoil, she clutched her tail tightly, seeking comfort in the familiar touch of her own scales. Memories of her fallen teammates, Charlie, Echo, and Delta, flashed through her mind, their faces etched in her memory forever. But it was the image of her late mother and daughter that brought Blue to her breaking point. The pain of their loss, the emptiness in her heart, was too much to bear. She closed her eyes tightly, trying to shut out the overwhelming emotions that threatened to consume her. In her mind, she could hear the echoes of their voices, feel the warmth of their presence. Her mother, who had taught her to hunt and survive in the harsh world of Isla Nublar. Her daughter, who had looked up to her with adoration and love, before their lives were tragically cut short. As the tears flowed freely down her scaly cheeks, Blue's body shook with silent sobs, the weight of her grief pressing down on her like a heavy burden. She longed for comfort, for solace, but there was no one to offer it to her in this lonely moment. As the night wore on, the hangar fell silent, the only sound the soft rustle of Blue's breathing as she tried to calm the storm of emotions raging inside her. The room was filled with shadows, the darkness closing in around her like a suffocating embrace. But as the first light of dawn began to filter through the windows, Blue felt a glimmer of hope stirring within her. She wiped away her tears with a clawed hand, the pain in her heart still raw but manageable. She knew that she had to be strong, for herself and for the memory of those she had lost. Rising to her feet on her hind legs, Blue glanced over at Owen, still asleep on the bed. She felt a surge of gratitude towards him, for his unwavering support and care. With a determined look in her eyes, she made a silent vow to honor the legacy of her fallen loved ones, to carry on their spirit in her every hunt and battle. As the new day dawned, Blue stepped out of the sleeping room, her reptilian form bathed in the soft light of morning. She knew that the road ahead would be filled with challenges and obstacles, but she also knew that she was not alone. With Owen by her side, and the memories of her cherished family guiding her, she would face whatever lay ahead with strength and courage. And as she let out a low, haunting growl of determination, the echoes of her past fading into the distance, Blue set off into the world once more, ready to face whatever trials awaited her with the fierce tenacity of a true alpha predator. Words. 538. The sound of the iron infusion machine hummed softly in the dimly lit hangar, casting a soft glow on Blue's sleek blue and silver scales. Owen Grady sat quietly in a chair next to her, watching over her with a mix of concern and weariness in his eyes. The day had been long, and the process of the iron infusion was tedious and time-consuming. As the sun began to set outside, casting long shadows across the hangar, Owen's eyelids grew heavy. He fought to stay awake, knowing that he needed to be there for Blue when she woke up. He leaned back in his chair, trying to get comfortable as he watched the last drops of iron drip into Blue's veins. Finally, the machine beeped softly, signaling that the infusion was complete. Owen stood up slowly, moving to unhook Blue from the machine. Blue stirred, her amber eyes blinking open as she slowly sat up, her clawed hands reaching out to grasp Owen's hand. Owen helped her to her feet, guiding her gently to a separate sleeping area. Blue lay down on the cool floor, curling up into a tight ball as Owen settled on the bed nearby, his eyes drifting shut. In the darkness, Blue's gaze fell on a small phone that had been left on the bedside table. Curious, she picked it up, scrolling through the pictures until she came across a snapshot of herself with her former teammates, Charlie, Echo, and Delta. As she stared at the image, memories flooded back, of the fun they used to have, the hunts they embarked on together, the bond they shared. And then, her gaze lingered on a figure in the background, her late mother, who had raised her from a hatchling, and her precious daughter, who had been taken too soon. A deep ache filled Blue's chest, a sense of loss so profound that it felt like a physical weight on her shoulders. Tears welled up in her eyes, silent sobs shaking her frame as she mourned the loss of her family, her pack. She curled up on the floor, clutching her tail tightly, the pain of her grief overwhelming her. Owen slept soundly, unaware of the turmoil raging within Blue's heart as she grieved silently, her sorrow echoing through the hollow hangar. In the midst of her despair, a single thought surfaced in Blue's mind, a desire for revenge. Revenge against those who had taken her family from her, who had destroyed everything she held dear. And as the darkness fell, casting its shadow over the hangar, a new resolve hardened in Blue's amber eyes. She would not rest until justice was served, until those responsible paid for their sins. And with a steely determination, Blue closed her eyes, her silent tears mingling with the echoes of her pain as she drifted into a restless slumber, a predator poised to strike. The night passed in silence, broken only by the distant howl of wind outside the hangar, carrying with it a promise of vengeance. And as dawn broke, casting its golden light over the sleeping form of Blue, a new day dawned, a day of reckoning, of justice sought and justice served. And Blue, the lone survivor of her pack, rose from her slumber, her eyes burning with an unquenchable fire as she prepared to face the challenges that lay ahead. With a final glance at Owen, still sleeping soundly on the bed, Blue slipped out of the hangar, her mind set on a path of retribution. And as she disappeared into the dawning light, a sense of foreboding hung heavy in the air, a premonition of the storm that was to come. And in that quiet moment, the world held its breath, waiting for the inevitable clash that would forever change the course of their destinies. Words. 643.